Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtaki. So, continuing with our discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 12, Birth of Emperor Parikshit, text number 28 onwards. Jigyasitatma yatharthyo muner vyasasutadaso hitvedam dip gangayam yasyati yadha kuto bhayam. After inquiring about proper self-knowledge from the great philosopher son of Vyasadeva, he will renounce all material attachment and achieve a life of fearlessness. So the Brahmins are further glorifying King Parikshit that what he would do. So after inquiring and realizing this knowledge, he will renounce all material attachment and achieve a life of fearlessness. So, material knowledge means ignorance of the knowledge of one's own self. Philosophy means to seek after the right knowledge of one's own self or the knowledge of self realization. Without self realization, philosophy is dry speculation or a waste of time and energy. So, Prabhupada is saying all kinds of philosophy, if it doesn't lead to the knowledge of self realization, knowledge of one's own self, it is it's a waste of time and energy. So many PhDs are roaming around these days, but until we become a real PhD, it's a wastage of time. And the real PhD is pure-hearted devotee. Until we become that, any philosophy is of no use. Srimad Bhagavatam gives the right knowledge of one's own self. And by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, one can get free from material attachment and enter into the kingdom of fearlessness. Why the fearlessness? Even though the person he would be living in the material world, but since he will be fully surrendered, fully taken shelter of Krishna's total feet, so there is no fear. There is no fear of his own maintenance. There is no fear of birth or death. There is no fear of anything. Anything that he needs in the life, he knows Krishna will provide to whatever extent Krishna wants to. So there is no fear. The fear that we have in our life is basically for the maintenance of this body, for the upkeep of this body. And a person who is fully devoted, fully surrendered to Krishna, Krishna does say in Bhagavad Gita, Yoga Kshemam Vahamyaham. I personally carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. He's speaking about his devotees. So there is no fear in the mind of a devotee, in the heart of a devotee. That's why Srila Prabhupada, his father named him Abhay Charan. Abhay Charan means one who has taken shelter of lotus feet of Krishna and he becomes Abhay. Abhay means fearless. And later on, when he got initiated, his Guru Maharaj called him Abhay Charana Ravind. So, same name. So they didn't change the name. So, that is the fearlessness. The material world is fearfulness. Its prisoners are always fearful, as within a prison house. In the prison house, no one can violate the jail rules and regulations, and violating the rules means another term for extension of prison life. Similarly, we in this material world existence are always fearful. This fearfulness is called anxiety. Everyone in the material life, in all species and varieties of life, is full of anxieties, either by breaking or without breaking the laws of nature. Liberation or mukti means getting relief from these constant anxieties. So we are all in anxiety. Either we break or don't break the laws of nature. So everyone, that's why Bhagavatam also calls and talks about padam padam yat vipadam na tesham. At every step in this material world, there is danger. Padam padam, at every step. Liberation or mukti means getting relief from these constant anxieties. This is possible only when the quality of anxiety is changed by the devotional service of the Lord. So see here Prabhupada is writing only when the quality of anxiety is changed. Means the anxiety will still be there, even when we come to bhakti. So but the quality will change. Means it will become spiritual anxiety. Srimad Bhagavatam gives us a chance to change the quality of anxiety from matter to spirit. Just like even when somebody is in temple or pursuing the spiritual life wholeheartedly, still the anxiety is there. Anxiety is there. How I can best serve Krishna? How can I bring more people to Krishna's shelter? How can I distribute more Prabhupada's books? So anxiety is always there. But along with that anxiety in the spiritual life, there is a sense of full uh, that there is a sense of satisfaction also at the same time. There is a sense of shelter, taking shelter, surrender to Krishna. Understanding, of course, results are in Krishna's hands, but the anxiety is to produce the best possible effort. That is anxiety, and that's good anxiety actually. Just like in Toronto, the devotees they decided to buy a church. It is right there in the downtown Toronto. And Prabhupada went to Toronto, and the church was very expensive. It was even at that time in '70s, early '70s. It was like $300,000. So Prabhupada, he went to see the church for the temple and he liked the church. But then he told the temple president that, no, we don't want to get, so we don't need so much anxiety in the spiritual life. So he came back where he was staying. And next morning he called the temple president and he told the president, I think you should go ahead and buy that church. He said, we do need anxiety for Krishna, for the service of Krishna. So yes, devotees were in anxiety, how they're going to pay it off because they hardly had any money. But Krishna made the arrangements. They sent some few donors and slowly they paid off. And it's one of the most beautiful properties of ISKCON. It's in right there in downtown Toronto. It's right now it's worth millions and millions of dollars. That property is worth so much. But anyway, actually it is worth because Krishna is sitting there. Krishna is living there. But that anxiety is required, and that anxiety actually purifies us when we are being anxious for Krishna. That purifies us. Other anxiety entangles us. When we are anxious about, oh, how I'm going to survive, how I'm going to take care of my monthly bills and this and that. So that anxiety entangles us. But this anxiety purifies us and liberates us actually. So the quality of anxiety has to be changed. This is done in the association of a learned philosopher like the self-realized Sukdev Goswami, the great son of Shiv Vyasadeva. Maharaj Parikshit, after receiving warning of his death, took advantage of this opportunity by association with Shukdev Goswami and achieved the desired result. This is a sort of imitation of the reciting and hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam there is a sort of imitation by professional men. And the foolish audience thinks that they get free from the clutches of material attachment and attain the life of fearlessness. So Prabhupada is saying one should be very careful of who one listens to Bhagavatam from. Not from professional men. One has to make sure that he listens to from a person who comes in parampara, from a devotee, from a Vaishnava. Because then only he can understand the philosophy, the deep points mentioned in Bhagavatam And then he can come to the level of fearlessness. Or at least, if not to the level of fearlessness, at least make some progress in the spiritual life. Text 29. Iti ragya upadishya vipra jataka kovida labdha pachitya sarve prati jagmu swakan grihan. Thus, those who were expert in astrological knowledge and in performance of the birth ceremony instructed King Yudhishthir about the future history of the child. Then, being sumptuously remunerated, they all returned to their respective homes. The Vedas are the storehouse of knowledge, both material and spiritual. But such knowledge aims at perfection of self realization. So, the Vedas means any knowledge, it's basically Veda. And the Vedas itself, they're the storehouse of all the knowledge. But like Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, by all the Vedas, I am to be known. So if we are studying Vedas, whether we are studying for material or spiritual benefits, if we don't understand Krishna, if we don't come to the level of serving Krishna by that knowledge, then it's a useless study. So that's a proper right. Such knowledge aims at perfection of self-realization. In other words, the Vedas are the guides for the civilized men in all respect. Since human life is an opportunity to get free from all material miseries, it is properly guided by the knowledge of the Vedas in the matters of both material needs and spiritual salvation. The specific intelligent class of men who were devoted particularly to the knowledge of the Vedas are called Vipras, or the graduates of the Vedic knowledge. So there are different branches of knowledge in the Vedas, of which astrology and pathology are two important branches necessary for the common man. And like Prabhupada said, even the Department of Military Education, Dhanur Veda, was also taken up by such intelligent men, like Brahmins. So everything is in the Vedas, whatever we need to know for the material or spiritual life. Amongst the Karma Kanda experts, the expert Jatak Vipras were good astrologers who could tell all the future history of a born child simply by the astral calculations of the time, Lagna. Such expert Jatak Vipras were present during the birth of Maharaj Parikshit, and his grandfather Maharaj Yudhishthir awarded the Vipras sufficiently with gold, land, villages, grains, and other valuable necessities of life, which also include cows. Prabhupada writes, there is a need of such Vipras in the social structure, and it is the duty of the state to maintain them comfortably, as designed in the Vedic procedure. So, such knowledge is very important. So, astrology is a perfect science, actually, mentioned in the Vedas. But these days, the astrologers are not perfect. That's a problem. And that's why we get so much of interpretation of the same chart. So astrology is perfect. There's nothing wrong with astrology, but the astrologers are not. So that's why this whole science is not being carried forward properly. Text 30. स एष लोके विख्याता परीक्षिदिति यत् प्रभु पूर्वं दृष्टम् अनुध्यायन् परीक्षेत नरेश्वयः. The child will become famous in the world as Parikshit, examiner, because he would come to examine all human beings in a search after that personality whom he saw before his birth. Thus, he would come to constantly contemplate him. So that's why his name was Parikshit, was an examiner. And he was searching for that personality whom he saw before his birth, means whom he saw in the womb of his mother. Maharaj Parikshit, fortunate as he was, got the impression of the Lord even in the womb of his mother, and thus his contemplation of the Lord was constantly with him. Once the impression of the transcendental form of the Lord is fixed in one's mind, one can never forget him in any circumstance. Child Parikshit, after coming out of the womb, was in the habit of examining everyone to see whether he was the same personality whom he first saw in the womb. So even when he was little, he was still looking for that person. But no one could be equal to or more attractive than the Lord, and therefore he never accepted anyone. But the Lord was constantly with him by such examination. Thus, Maharaj Parikshit was always engaged in the devotional service of the Lord by remembrance. The Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam. So, Smaranam was first service that Parikshit Maharaj did. Later on, he did the Shravanam. He heard Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Jiva Goswami remarks in this connection that every child, if given an impression of the Lord from his very childhood, certainly becomes a great devotee of the Lord, like Maharaj Parikshit. One may not be as fortunate as Maharaj Parikshit to have the opportunity to see the Lord in the womb of his mother. But even if he is not so fortunate, he can be made so if the parents of the child desire him to be so. And then Prabhupada writes about his life. There is a practical example in my personal life in this connection. My father was a pure devotee of the Lord, and when I was only 4 or 5 years old, my father gave me a couple of forms of Radha and Krishna. In a playful manner, I used to worship these deities along with my sister, and I used to imitate the performances of a neighboring temple of Radha Govinda. By constantly visiting this neighboring temple and copying the ceremonies in connection with my own deities of play, I developed a natural affinity for the Lord. My father used to observe all the ceremonies befitting my position. Later on, these activities were suspended due to my association in the schools and colleges, and I became completely out of practice. But in my youthful days, when I met my spiritual master, Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, again I revived my old habit, and the same playful deities became my worshipful deities in proper regulation. So Prabhupada is recalling his experience that his father gave him a set of deities of Radha and Krishna when Prabhupada was only 4 or 5 years old, and he would play with those deities. They would mock up some festivals, imitate the festivals or artis that used to happen at Radha Govinda temple nearby. But he's saying when he went to higher schools and colleges, I left the practice. But when I met my Guru Maharaj, and I was that time Prabhupada was working, so he revived that service of the deities. But now he says they became my worshipful deities. This was followed up until I left the family connection, and I'm pleased that my generous father gave the first impression, which was developed later into the regulative devotion service by his divine grace. Maharaj Prahlad also advised that such impressions of a godly relation must be impregnated from the beginning of childhood. Otherwise, one may miss the opportunity of the human form of life, which is very valuable, although it is temporary like others. So, another thing that the parents ought to do with the child. See, Prabhupada said, my father was a pure devotee, and that's why he gave me the deities, and first I played with them, then I worshipped them. So many things we can learn. Father or parents, if they are devotees, they can instill this sanskar or bhakti in their kids. So it's not like, oh, you do it because I'm telling you to do. No, it's the kids will do. They will follow their parents. They'll see the parents what they're doing, what the example they're setting. So the kids are very observant. They're very smart. So first parents have to become devotees, then they can expect the kids to become devotees. And another thing the kids always notice is any um, I don't want to say hypocrisy or any discrepancy in what the parents are saying and what the parents are doing. They always notice. So we have to be very careful, at least in front of them. So you have to be very careful what you say and what you do. Text 31. Sarajputro vavridde ashu shuchaivodupa apure mana pitribhi kashta bhere sonvaham. As the moon in its waxing forenight develops day after day, so the royal prince Parikshit very soon developed luxuriantly under the care and full facilities of his guardian forefathers. यक्षमाणो अश्वमेधेन ज्ञाति द्रोह जिहासया राजा लब्ध धनो दध्यो अन्यत्र करदंडयो. Just at this time, King Yudhishthir was considering performing a horse sacrifice to get freed from sins incurred from fighting with kinsmen. But he became anxious to get some wealth, for there were no surplus funds outside of the fines and tax collection. As the Brahmins and Vipras had a right to be subsidized by the state executive had the right to collect taxes and fines from the citizens. After the Battle of Kurukshetra, the state treasury was exhausted, and therefore there was no surplus funds except the funds from tax collection and fines. Such funds were sufficient only for the state budget, and having no excess funds, the king was anxious to get more wealth in some other way in order to perform the horse sacrifice. Maharaj Yudhishthira wanted to perform this sacrifice under the instruction of Bhishmadev. So, as Bhishmadev had instructed him, he wanted to perform this horse sacrifice. But see, Maharaj Yudhishthira, although he was the king of the whole planet Earth, he became anxious to get some wealth, for there were no surplus funds outside of fines and tax collection. So there was no case of just increasing the taxes. Because Maharaj, the king, the leader, he wants the money to perform some sacrifice. He could have done, "Yeah, okay, I'm increasing the taxes." But he didn't do that. Or like these days, what they do, they just print extra money because it is all printed money these days. There are no gold coins. Okay, you print extra money, you have plenty of money, so you can spend. No, Maharaj Yudhishthira didn't do any of that. तद अभिप्रेतम आलक्ष्य भ्रातृ अच्युत चोदितः धनम प्रहीणम आजुहर उदीच्यम दिशि भूरिशः. Understanding the hearty wishes of the king, his brothers, as advised by the infallible Lord Krishna, collected sufficient riches from the north, left by King Marut. So Maharaj Marut, one of the great emperors of the world, he reigned over the world long before the reign of Maharaj Yudhishthira. He was the son of Maharaj Avikshit and was a great devotee of the son of sun god known as Yamraj. His brother Samvarth was a rival priest of the great Brihaspati, the learned priest of the demigods. He conducted one sacrifice called Shankar Yagya, by which the Lord was so satisfied that he was pleased to hand over to him the charge of a mountain peak of gold. Now look at this sentence what Prabhupada is saying. This peak of gold is somewhere in the Himalaya mountains, and modern adventurers may try to find it there. So you all want to go there to find out where is this peak of gold? And this peak of solid gold. It's not golden, it's not gold plated, it's solid gold. He was so powerful an emperor that at the day's end of sacrifice, the demigods from the other planets like Indra, Chandra, and Brihaspati used to visit his palace. And because he had the gold peak at his disposal, he had sufficient gold in his possession. The canopy of the sacrificial altar was completely made of gold. In his daily performances of the sacrificial ceremonies, some of the inhabitants of the Vayu Loka were invited to expedite the cooking work of the ceremony. And the assembly of the demigods in the ceremony was led by Vishwadeva. By his constant pious work, this is about King Marut, he was able to drive out all kinds of diseases from the jurisdiction of his kingdom. All the inhabitants of higher planets like Devaloka and Pitriloka were pleased with him for this great sacrificial ceremonies. Every day he used to give in charity to the learned Brahmins such things as beddings, seeds, conveyances, and sufficient quantities of gold. Because of munificent charities and performances of innumerable sacrifices, the King of Heaven, Indradev, was fully satisfied with him and always wished for his welfare. Due to his pious activities, he remained a young man throughout his life and reigned over the world for 1000 years. Even Lord Krishna praised his spirit of pious activities. So later on, Prabhupada is writing the success. Okay, so in this yagya, he gives so much of charity. Actually, some place Prabhupada has explained, or maybe it's in the later verses. I know. So Prabhupada explained at some other place that in those sacrifices, King Marut would feed all the guests in gold plates. The prasadam that was served, it was served in gold plates, and the drinks were served in gold cups. And all the guests who were invited, they were so satisfied that they didn't just put the gold plates in the bags and took them away. They just threw the gold plates over there. They were not gold leaf plates. They were not golden paint plates. They were solid gold plates. And they just threw the gold plates there because they said, we are satisfied. We don't need to carry these gold plates with us. So Arjun had gone to this place and he brought all those gold plates and gold cups with him back to Hastinapur so that Maharaj Yudhishthira could perform the sacrifice using that money. So that is the reason one of the names of Arjun is Dhananjaya. So he brought back lots of dhan, lots of money for Maharaj Yudhishthira. So that was the standard of living at that time. We can't even imagine somebody throwing even a steel plate. Here the gold plates are thrown like and Maharaj Marut had a whole peak of mountain, gold peak of mountain at his disposal. And Prabhupada is saying that peak is still there in the Himalaya region somewhere. So maybe we should tell the proper department in Indian government that there is some peak like that. Why don't you go and get some gold from there? So anyway, I'll stop here. Anybody has any questions or comments? I guess everybody is contemplating what that gold peak would look like. So no more questions. That's why in Kali Yuga, all those horse sacrifice or this sacrifice, that is prohibited. That's not possible. So just do Sankirtan Yagya, Sankirtan sacrifice, and that's good enough for this Kali Yuga. So I guess we can stop here. Nobody has any questions. So I'll see you all tomorrow. You all have a wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Ram.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.